Welcome to the Power to Flourish podcast, where science meets the art of a beautiful life. I'm Dr. Andrea Line, positive psychologist, giftedness expert and coach, and modern-day spiritual godmother to brilliant, deep-feeling women. This isn't just another self-help podcast. It's a sanctuary, a sacred space to come back to yourself. Each week, we'll explore the emotional experience of gifted, sensitive women and what it means to live a life that feels as beautiful as it may look. Because flourishing isn't a luxury, it's your birthright, and your life is waiting. This is the Power to Flourish podcast. Welcome back. I'm your host, Dr. Andrea Line. This is the Power to Flourish podcast, and today I'm going to be talking about how gifted women can set goals differently so they actually achieve the things that they want to achieve. And last week, if you haven't listened to last week, before we even start on this conversation, I want to encourage you to go back, and you don't necessarily have to listen to that one before you listen to this one, but please do, because it is my heart's cry for you as we step into fully 2026. We are now in February. January is already behind us. The month is moving. So I'm going to share with you some important variables in goal setting as it relates to gifted women. But what I really am talking about, and what my passion really is about, is women transforming their lives. And so goals can help us. Are very important. In fact, everything that we do actually is goal directed. Even when we think we're not consciously setting goals, everything that we do is because there is a goal that we have fulfilled. If we go pick up our kids at the school, the goal was to pick up the kids at the school. We get in the car, we go to the school, we pick them up. Everything we do is goal directed. So when we think about it that way, there really is nothing wrong, quote unquote, wrong with goals. But I do think that sometimes we get a little sidetracked, or we get the process of it maybe a little backwards. So we're going to talk about that. But I want to take a moment right at the beginning. And if you have been listening to this podcast for a little while, and maybe today is the first time you found the podcast, welcome. I would love for you to think of one other woman in your life who you believe is a gifted woman in some way, shape, or form, or thinks this message would resonate with her, and please forward her this podcast. I believe that the way this podcast is going to grow, I'm not going to go out there and run ads to the podcast or do all these things. This is like a grassroots thing. And it's like, if you know, you know. If you're a gifted woman, this is where you need to show up. So please, I would be so grateful, because when I get messages from some of you and you say, oh my goodness, I feel like you're like in my head and you are, it's like, I actually had a conversation with a woman the other day, and she was describing some things, and I was processing it afterwards and thinking, gosh, we're all very different and we have different life experiences, but there are these certain things that I just get when it comes to gifted women. Like I know the psychology inside and out in this at least general way. Of course, we're all very different, but so that being said, it just warms my heart when if another woman can get hold of this and hear some things that make her feel seen and understood and shed some light on some things for her in her life. That's the best feeling for me, to feel like, okay, I've done what I've come to do. So I'd be so grateful. Okay, so let's dive in. This conversation, you may be someone who is a great goal setter and a goal achiever. You may be in that camp. You may be someone who loves goal setting, but if you're being honest, you don't feel like you're really great at achieving the goals. And then you may be in the camp where you're like, goal setting? Should I do that? I hate that, whatever. There's a whole spectrum. So I don't want to assume any of you are one or the other, but I think many of you, there's at least some areas of your life that you set goals, whether you write them down or not, you set goals. You are intentional. you have vision for your life. And it can be frustrating sometimes when we feel, gosh, I'm just not disciplined enough. If I just had more discipline, then I could meet these goals. And sometimes it's not that discipline's not important, but today I want to talk about this part of the equation where I think discipline is not actually the solution. It's not really a discipline problem. Oftentimes it's a design problem. And when we think about goal setting, gosh, I'm sure there's hundreds of books on goal setting. If you went to the bookstore, right? If you go on Amazon, type in goal setting. I'm sure there are so many different frameworks, so many different ways to think about it. So many really good ones, and I love a great goal setting framework. But I want to take you through some of the reasons why traditional goal setting can sometimes backfire for gifted, emotionally attuned women. And if those approaches work for you, beautiful, wonderful, keep doing them. But if you feel sometimes like, these are some of the things I hear, like I set goals, but I shut down before I even start. Or I get overwhelmed, like I don't even want to set the goals because I have this history now where I don't set the goals and I don't want to set myself up for disappointment. So I'm not even going to try. I'm not going to set any goals. I'm just going to live my life day to day and hope that some good things will happen. Or maybe this is more of your experience. I can visualize the dream, but I get overwhelmed by the steps. I have very much fallen into that camp. I'm a really great visualizer. Or maybe it's the pressure to get it perfect kills my motivation. And you might not say it exactly that way, but that is what happens. If you lift the hood on the car and you really look inside, that's exactly what's happening, right? We set these great goals, and then somewhere in our thinking is like, I've got to do it perfectly. I've got to do it perfectly. And if I don't do it perfectly, as soon as I fall off and I fail and I mess up, or I didn't, whatever it is, the exercise routine, the work habits, the meditation routine, whatever it is, then, and we just, before we know it, we're back to not doing the thing that we wanted to. So does any of that sound familiar? So in this way, in these situations, traditional goal setting often triggers the exact opposite of what you need to move forward. Let's see if any of these sound familiar to you. Let's just unpack it a bit. Okay, external pressure. When we feel external pressure, when anyone feels external pressure, really, right? We are more likely to shut down. Now, not everyone does this, but gifted women who don't respond well to really rigid systems or outside pressure, if that's you. Many of us, I'm raising my hand, when the system is way too rigid, we will either start self-sabotaging, we will rebel, we will shut down, we'll find some way out of that rigid system. Even if it's a rigid system we put in place, and we often do this. And I like good systems and structures. And sometimes outside pressure can feel like it's working for a time. But at a certain point, just check in with yourself to see if this has been your experience, see if it's true. At a certain point, the rigidity of the system or the extreme outside pressure that we put on ourselves or that other people are putting on ourselves, it will create resistance. The moment a goal feels like it's being imposed, even if it is by your own high expectations, your nervous system will shut it down. Does that ring true for any of you? Let's talk about perfectionism. Many gifted women have what I call invisible excellence conditioning. And really, this is perfectionism. Because I don't think perfectionism and excellence are exactly the same things at all. But when we've been praised for our brilliance, our creativity, our amazing ideas, all of whatever it looked like for you, since childhood, our whole lives, people have noticed, people have made comments. We got the straight A. We got the gold star. We got the high five from our parents. We expect that we like that. That feels nice. We'll just keep doing that. So when we set a goal, we unconsciously raise the bar so high that sometimes it becomes paralyzing. And that's where perfectionism comes in and just totally hijacks any of the great goal setting that we have put in place for ourselves. Another reason why this doesn't work so well for gifted women is because of sensory or emotional overwhelm. Now, you may be a gifted woman who doesn't struggle so much with this, but many women that I know who identify as being gifted in one way or another do have some flavor of this. So what this looks like is you're highly sensitive to internal and or external stimulation. And traditional productivity culture often asks of us to override your body, your emotions, your rhythm. And when you are sensitive, and I really don't mean that in any kind of negative way, it's a neutral description. When you have heightened sensitivity, I think all of us have learned how to override it, but that's not always helpful in the long term. And that often can be a recipe for burnout. So we have these goals, we're overriding our system, we're not actually honoring the wiring that we have. And then we wonder why we can't keep up and continue with these, usually again, high expectations and goals that we have for ourselves. So like the whole thing, the whole swirl of it, the soup can be a big mess. And lastly, I want to talk about shame spirals. So I think all of us know exactly what I'm going to say about this. But when a goal doesn't go as planned, whether that is the big goal or the goal for that week or whatever the little goal was for that day, when it doesn't go as planned, when we didn't go for the run when we said we were, when we start to feel sick, so, the big important meeting that was a big part of this, a larger goal or whatever, we have to reschedule, cancel, right? Any of these kinds of things, they don't go as planned. It's often not just disappointing. It, for some of us, can feel like a personal failure. And for high achieving women, shame is that saboteur that whispers to you all along, maybe you're not as capable as you thought. Maybe this goal you set, maybe you shouldn't have set that goal. Maybe you can't do this. Look, you failed again. You didn't show up for yourself. You always do this. And then we just go down the spiral. And these are all the things. Now, a lot of people struggle with goal setting, but I just wanted to highlight the particular issues that gifted women often struggle with when it comes to goal setting. Because when you know that these are some of the, not all, but some of the potential, we'll call them, they're like grenades. They're like grenades in the field. And if we're not aware that they're out there and we step on it and we're shocked and it blows up the whole plan. So we need to be aware. These are the things. Of what I just said, ask yourself, does this ring true for me? Have I struggled with them? External pressure leading to shutdown, perfectionism, sensory and emotional overwhelm that we then just override and keep going, thinking that's going to be useful and helpful in the long term. And then the shame spirals. So those are some of the challenges. But what is actually true and beneficial about the gifted brain and motivation? What can we lean on that actually is maybe a little bit more powerful for us? Again, this can be true for all human beings. Anything that I'm saying, it's not just for gifted women, but it is usually particularly true for us. So what's really beautiful is that rather than being driven by pressure, and again, many of us grew up and learned that pressure really is a thing that drives us. And so we got to keep the pressure on, because if we take the pressure off, we're just going to sit around all day and do nothing and not get anything done. And so we got to have the pressure, right? So we think that's the way to go. And it can serve us well for a long time. We can do life that way for years. I did life that way really for decades until it doesn't work. But a better way, and what the gifted person is exquisitely wired to thrive in, is being driven by meaning. So rather than pressure, let's look at meaning. Rather than a rigid schedule, let's look at creative cycles. Because we do have cycles, and all of us are different. You have a particular cycle that will look different from another person's cycle. But when we're in that sweet spot of our creativity, things just blossom and bloom, and it's so amazing, right? I'm sure you've had that experience. That's different than saying, I've got this rigid schedule. Now, some of you do well with more structure, and you got to know yourself. But even with structure, you don't want it too rigid, right? You need to have you've got to have some flexibility in there. So the important thing to just take from all of this is that, yes, sure, our brains are wired in a certain way, or our personality is a certain way, at least historically, where we can feel like, gosh, it really is. It feels extra hard for me to get the goals done. It feels extra hard to reach goals, or at least certain kinds of goals. But the reality is, of course, as you've heard me say over and over again, your brain is not broken at all. It's just brilliantly built for a different kind of goal setting. So here are some ideas. Let me just explain for a second so you can just think about it. Pick one goal right now that you have for yourself in 2026. Last week, we started talking about goals. Goals aren't bad. Goals are great, as long as we're putting them in context of a larger purpose, which we will talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. But think of this one goal that you have and consider looking at it through this lens. Is it meaning driven? So a goal without soul, it's probably not going to move you. Hey, quick note before we continue. I wanted to share something close to my heart. This February, I am hosting a live 4-week facilitated experience for gifted women called Adored. It's for women who are capable, thoughtful, and very good at holding everything together for everyone else, yet quietly tired of being the strong one all the time. This isn't about fixing yourself or turning your life into yet another project. It is about changing the relationship you have with yourself, the one that shapes every other relationship in your life. We will begin the week of February 11th. The group is intentionally small and will determine exact day and time to meet once we have everyone in there. If this feels like it might be for you, you can learn more at the link in the show notes. I'd love to hold this space with you. Now back to the show. Most gifted women need purpose, beauty in some form. I don't mean, again, just aesthetic beauty, but there's something about it that is attractive to you, that calls you. Purpose, beauty, and authenticity. And if it doesn't resonate deeply for you, ultimately, you'll check out. You'll check out, you'll self-sabotage, you'll find distractions, and you'll feel frustrated because you don't know why you can't just do this goal. Okay, here's another one to look at your goal through this lens. Approaching the goal in deep focus bursts rather than having this expectation that it's got to be quote unquote consistent in some more traditional sense, but that you can dive into certain flow states that can produce incredible results and oftentimes really short, inspired bursts. Do you know what I'm talking about? Now, for some goals, this might not always track with, right? So these are all different things that you can consider with your goals. But you work like this sometimes, right? You can sit down and you're amazed by how much you just did in 30 minutes or an hour, when the other thing that you think should have taken you 10 minutes feels like it's taking you 10 days. So there are different goals. They require different things. And they require, again, these creative sort of cycles and going with our strengths that sometimes is working in these bursts. It's not a flaw. It's a gift. And you operate, again, related to this, in these nonlinear cycles. So your energy and your creativity and your clarity often ebb and flow. Do you find that to be true? It's just like nature, right? We're not robots. So when you honor your cycles, again, especially if this is around like a more creative goal, it's really important to build that in to how you're goal setting. So you can do this more sustainably instead of crashing and then feeling you got to start over again. And then finally, think of your goal, think of this goal setting in the context of your own autonomy and flexibility. You have got to feel like you have some sense of agency, a sense of sovereignty over your choices. And the moment you feel boxed in, again, think about this goal. Are you choosing it? Are you really choosing it? Or are you choosing it because you think your husband wants you to, or your friend's doing it, so you think you should, or society says you should, so you should? Like, you got to really question, why am I setting this goal? Do I actually really want it? And if so, why do I want it? So when you start setting goals, and even just like your to-do list, and you feel like your to-do list, it starts to feel like it is imposed on you, you start getting that resistance. And whether you consciously do it or not, you begin to rebel. And so one way to think about it, instead of, shaming, blaming ourselves for this rebellion, think of it this way. It is your inner self, your highest self, your capital S self, protecting you in that moment. Because your capital S self is only really is going to do the things that it's in full alignment to do. So if you've got things and goals and things, and you're just really not in alignment, your higher self in some ways is kind of like protecting you from that, or at least shining a light. So when you're setting your goals, think about, is this meaning driven? Can I make it? How can I make this meaning driven? How can I include these bursts of energy, creativity, whatever, into this goal, if that applies? How can I apply working in nonlinear cycles as it relates to this goal? And again, not all of these will apply, but you can ask the question. And then the final one is, how can I check myself and make sure I'm giving myself true autonomy over this goal and flexibility? So those are some important questions to ask. Okay, so how do we create a framework for the gifted woman that will help us set goals that actually, quote unquote, work? What does that mean? They work. It means that we're more likely to succeed. And again, I touched on this a little bit last week, but last week's focus was a little bit more of a call to awakening to this moment in time. But I want to sort of revisit this idea of how are we thinking about our goals? So here's a framework I would love for you to consider. And you may do something like this already. But rather than being focused on, here's the goal that I'm going to set, that I'm going to achieve, that I'm going to perform in 2026, I want you to think first in terms of identity, and then alignment, and then micro actions, including those particular gifted women's strengths that I just talked about, right? We can imbue our goal setting with those things. But here's a framework. So when you think about, let's just take 2026. We're in February already. Have you already asked yourself this question for this year? Who am I becoming? This is a question that I have been grappling with. I'm kind of always grappling with it, honestly, but the new year energy, sort of brings it forth. So before you start chasing any goal, ask yourself, who am I becoming? Because your goals ideally should flow from your essence, like from who you really, really, truly are, which is not your ego. It's not another way to say that is like you're just your natural self, your small self, little s self. But we're talking about your truest self, right? I hope most of you understand what I'm talking about with that. So instead of asking yourself, what should I do this year? Or what do I want to do? Or what do I want to accomplish? Here's a question you can ask. What would be most beautiful and life-giving for the woman I am becoming? And once you know, or have some idea, or have some sense of who you're becoming, of who you're desiring to become, then you're going to check for resonance. Does this goal align with your values, your essence, like I said, your season of life? That's a huge one. Your emotional bandwidth in this moment, which can change, right? However things look in February could look really different in April and vice versa. So alignment is something, sometimes people talk about like balance, the work-life balance, but for me it's this, it's a constant attunement because life is always changing, circumstances change, and when circumstances change. So alignment is not something you do once. Alignment is like, it's the congruence. It's checking in. This is what I mean. I'm sort of always thinking, who am I becoming? Because it's always, am I behaving in congruence with the woman I'm becoming? Am I being her? Am I stepping into her? Am I living the life that's congruent and in alignment with her, given my values, given the season of life, given realities, right? And then finally are the micro actions. This is the part where a lot of us, it feels a little more comfortable because it's like, okay, action. Let's figure that. I can do that. But this is only after you've asked the question, after you have gotten clear on who am I becoming? Who do I want to become? What do I value? What's going on right now? Then we come up with the micro actions. And this is where it's so beautiful because it doesn't have to be pressured. There's no pressure. We're talking about, we've got the vision, we've got the identity, we're becoming. And every day there are these small, beautiful steps that we get to practice every day. And some days we'll miss it. And some days we'll nail it. Because every day is just another day to practice. So we don't have to think about like, oh, this big, huge goal and it doesn't really have meaning. And then I failed. And then the shame side, like all of that. We're like, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. This is the more sustainable way. And this is why, even if you haven't checked this out, the first steps to a beautiful life, which is this, I call it like a little toolkit. It's a digital offer. I think the link would be in the show notes. So you can check it out, but it's all based on this concept of small steps, micro actions, getting the vision, but then there's the micro actions. But we do have to take action. And sometimes we can get a lot done in a short period of time. So let's make this very practical and tangible for you today. If you are ready and you're like, okay, I did some goal setting. I thought, I did this thing. I'm thinking about this for 2026. Now I'm hearing you and like, maybe I need to take a step back. That's okay. So take the goals. Maybe you already set some and maybe they're perfect. And maybe you just have to adjust your approach. so that you are more likely to be successful. But after you listen to this, let's just practice this. I want you to choose just one intention, an intention. This is not a to-do task. It's not a resolution, but this is like a soul-led, like your innermost intention that feels really nourishing and really true. So ask yourself, what quality do I want to embody this season? Maybe let's just say this month. Or if you make, it could be, what do I want to embody this week? Is it peace? Is it play? Is it presence? Is it more power? I want you to write it down. I want you to put it somewhere visible, whether it's your desktop or your phone. So put a sticky note on your mirror, wherever. One thing, one thing. What am I wanting to embody this season? Who am I becoming? I'm becoming a more peaceful woman. I'm becoming a more joyful woman. This is who I'm becoming. I'm becoming a woman who's very present in the moment. What is it for you? And then I want you to choose one. I'm going to call this like a grounding ritual, because we often very easily can live in our heads. Is that not true? Our minds are like, it's a real comfy place to be. So I want you to get you back into your body. Rituals are beautiful for this reason. So it could be something like, I'm going to take a 1-minute breath, or 3 minutes or whatever, before I pick up my phone. I'm going to get in my body. I'm going to light a candle at my desk right before I start working. And I'm going to really focus on it and notice it. Whatever is going to help you observe, notice, perceive, sense in your body, that's what I want to do. And it could be movement, right? A short little walk, but just something small. And then I want you to choose an alignment practice. So you want to check in with yourself regularly. If you don't do this now, I want to encourage you to do this. And for some of you, that means journaling. And some of you hate journaling. I happen to love journaling, but it's not like journaling is this magic thing and everyone, talks about journaling now. But for some of us, it's the only time, and it's this tangible way to give ourselves space and to check in with ourselves. So you don't necessarily have to journal, but if you struggle with checking with yourself, you might want to do it this way. So here's a single, like a very simple prompt. What's nourishing me right now and what's draining me? That's it. Now, you don't have to journal this. If you're really good at checking in with yourself, you could just check in with yourself throughout the day. What's nourishing me right now? What's draining me? Do I feel nourished? Do I feel drained? If I feel drained, do I need to do something to nourish myself? Like, am I dehydrated? I need to drink some water. I mean, it can be as simple as that. This is just getting in alignment and attuned, and it helps with the clarity. Okay. And then finally, we are going to redefine progress without self-judgment. Some of you love a good spreadsheet. You do not need a spreadsheet to know if you're growing. You do not need a spreadsheet. You do not need a wearable and an app on your phone tracking this and that. Like, if you love that, great. But we need to stop outsourcing everything to all these external things, my opinion. Because what I'm trying to get you to do is get used to checking in with your own self and you being the one to know. So ask these questions. Not your Apple Watch, not your Oura Ring. Ask yourself, am I growing? Am I more present in my life? Do I feel more connected to myself? Am I making space for beauty, for joy, for connection, for growth? Like, am I doing those things? These are the kinds of questions you can ask. But we're not tracking it like we got to track everything on a spreadsheet. There's a time and place for a spreadsheet. But in this right now, that's not how we're going to judge. That's not how we're going to define progress. It's like the difference between the image that comes to mind is, women who get overly obsessed with a number on the scale, and they've got to sort of pull back from that. And I've worked with many women in the past who had, eating disorders and just unhealthy eating patterns. And they had to sort of like pull back from constantly checking as if the number on the scale was the true metric of something. And they had to learn how to eat more intuitively or learn how to sense how they're feeling based on, their energy or how their clothes fit. That's what I'm talking about. These are the true metrics. You know if you're growing. You may be growing actually sometimes in certain ways that you didn't even set a goal for. And the thing that you set a goal for, you might look at and say, I don't feel like I've made very much progress there. But actually, if you turn your head and looked over here, oh my goodness, you're making tons of progress. And you're not even giving yourself credit for it because you didn't write that goal down. So I do think it's powerful and important to write our goals down. But let's just take a bigger view. Let's check in. All right, let me leave you with this. Traditional goal setting, all the stuff that's out there that you can listen to, learn from, read books about, they're great. Really great gems, wisdom, and all of that. And the things that can work for you, pull it out, use it, let it work for you. Perfect. But in the times and in the situations where you feel like you are bumping up against the wall and it's, do you guys have like the same goal? This has happened to me where I have a goal. It's the same goal that I've had for like the last 5 years. It's embarrassing to say, but I have definitely had goals like that. And you have to stop and ask yourself, why do I even keep writing this goal down? Because do I really care about it? So I hope that this episode gives you some extra things to consider when you are setting some goals. If some of this resonates and it's helpful, wonderful. And share with a friend, because I guarantee you, if you know a woman and she's in February, she may already feel defeated. It's so disappointing, right? It's so disappointing. Sometimes we start, the first week or two of January and we're on fire, and then February comes and we're like, oh, okay. And this is why we've got to dig a little deeper. Who am I becoming? What is the bigger goal? What's the bigger thing? I hope this was helpful. And just remember, you do not have to do this alone. You are not too late. You are right on time for the life that's waiting for you. But I really sincerely hope that your approach to 2026 this year feels more empowered. This is why I call this podcast The Power to Flourish, because you do have the power. You do have the power. You've got everything you need. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of a different perspective. And then before you know it, you've traveled a long distance in a short period of time. With that, I hope you have a beautiful week. And until next time, keep flourishing, my friend. Thank you for listening to the Power to Flourish podcast. I hope today's conversation left you feeling more seen, more supported, and more deeply connected to yourself. And if this episode resonated, would you take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend? It's one of the best ways to help this work reach the women who need it most. You'll find show notes, links, and resources from today's episode at powertoflourish.com. And now just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not therapy, medical advice, or a substitute for professional support. Listening doesn't make me your therapist or doctor, though if you're looking for a coach, you know where to find me. All right, beautiful one, that's it for now. Until next time, trust yourself, honor your gifts, and keep flourishing.